for the glory of old state, for her founder strong and great, for the future that we wait. Raise the song, raise the song.
Where else would you rather be? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and welcome to the People of Penn State. Each week on the podcast, you can expect to hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they're passionate about, and you can expect to feel the pride and the power of the Penn State Network. The People of Penn State podcast can be found on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Subscribe and give us a rating. Ratings and reviews are the best way to help fellow Penn Staters find these great stories that we pass on to you every month. And another great story to share with you today, Wendy Pease is the owner and president of Rapport International. It's a cultural wordsmith. Her life's work is connecting people around the world by providing culturally adapted translations and interpretations in over 200 languages. She's the author of The Language of Global Marketing, Translate Your Domestic Strategies into International Sales and Profits. She's the host of the Global Marketing Show podcast and holds a BA from Penn State and an MBA from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. I'm excited to welcome Wendy Pease into the podcast. Wendy, how are you?
I'm great. I am so thankful for being here. I woke up with a smile on my face knowing that I was going to talk to you at Penn State today.
Well, I'm a little nervous. Like you're like a true blue podcaster, and so I hope our podcast kind of lives up to the standard that you have set with yours.
Oh, so far it does. You're using StreamYard and your episodes are great. And I think that everybody who's listening to this should go give it a high ranking and follow it to make sure you get all the episodes. So I'm just thrilled to be here, Paul.
That's great. Vince, we're gonna have to cut that and use that as a bumper for promoting the podcast there. Vince is our producer backstage doing a great job. As always, with the People of Penn State podcast. Wendy, let's start our conversation right at the very beginning. How did you become a Penn State Nittany Lion?
Well, there was no place, I didn't apply anyplace else. I was bound to be a Penn Stater. My father was a professor at Penn State in the Department of Agriculture, and I went to State High. And my senior year, I took a modified school day and I took classes up at Penn State. So I had enough experience going to Penn State, didn't even apply anyplace else. The summer before I was supposed to start, I told my parents I wanted to sublease an apartment and live outside. And they said, nope, you're not going to an apartment. You have to go to the dorms to live first. I said, fine, I'll start summer semester. Or summer term. We were in the terms back then. So I walked into admissions and I said, I want to start summer term. And they laughed and they were like, yeah, you can't change to go in the fall. I said, no, I want to change to go in the summer so I can live on campus. So that's how I became a Penn Stater. It was just meant to be.
That's a wonderful story. I'm a proud parent of 3 State High grads and a Penn Stater. Actually, today she is over at Penn State as part of her orientation. She starts in 2 weeks, so she'll be a summer student just like you were.
Yeah. Oh, I had a blast summer term. I was so glad that I went because I made my best friends from college that term. Well, 2 of them, and then we added 3 more on. But yeah, I still keep in touch with them.
Absolutely. Thinking back to your time as a student, what were you involved with at Penn State?
Oh, I had a lot of fun. I was PR director for Special Olympics that was held at Penn State. I played intramural sports, softball, flag football. I was a little sister at Kappa Sigma fraternity. I was a lifeguard at the natatorium in the White Building. And then highly involved with hanging out with my roommates and having a lot of fun with them. So it was the education, it was the social life, it was working, it was sports. I was highly involved, loved it all. Oh, I was also a sports broadcaster for WPSU.
Oh, wow. That's what sports would you would you commentate on for them?
Well, I didn't do the commentation, but I did do, like you listen to the news and then the sports comes on afterwards. So I would do that. I'd give all the reports of what was going on in the sports world.
Oh, that's amazing. What a wide array of things that you were involved in while you were at Penn State. Special Olympics still a big part of the Penn State experience. They were just here last week on campus for the Special Olympics. Sue Paterno very involved in that effort here every summer at Penn State.
Yeah, and it's great. You don't have to be like head of PR or anything. You can go out for the day, and they always need the coaches that volunteer with the athletes to take them around. So if you have any interest in doing it, I thought it was fabulous.
This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined by Wendy Pease. Wendy is the owner and president of Rapport International. So, Wendy, tell us a little bit about your company. What's the origin story of Rapport International?
Well, it was founded in 1987 by a woman that knew there was a need for high quality translation services. And she ran it for 17 years and then was looking to sell it. So I had actually had two layoffs during maternity leaves. One was a venture funded company that got bought out and was moving away and integrating. And the other was a global marketing department that did away with their uh, it was a life sciences services company that did away with their global marketing department. And so I was like kind of fed up with corporate and ran into somebody at a venture capital forum who said, buy a company. So I started laughing and then daydreaming online and came across this little translation company for sale. And I ended up buying it, made another acquisition about 7 years ago. I've been running it for 17 and a half. I've hired a lot of stay-at-home moms who want to go back to work, who are very dedicated. We work hard, and then we, play hard in our personal lives. We're looking to hire in sales and account management and project management. If anybody's interested, certainly reach out to me. So that's how I ended up here 17 and a half years ago. And ironically, I realized that everything that I did since graduation all led to being in this position where I'm actually using my major. So major and minor. So it all works out.
That is a little bit of kind of a rare story here on the People of Penn State. Oftentimes, people graduate with a degree from Penn State, and the forces around them maybe take them in different directions, right? So they might have an ag degree and they end up working in marketing, or a wide variety of stories that we have featured. But you're actually using your Penn State degree in your everyday life. Talk a little bit about where your interest in global marketing came from.
Well, I lived internationally when I was a child. I lived in Mexico, Taiwan, and the Philippines. And so I learned, in Mexico, I spent half a day in school in Spanish and then half a day in English. So I got a good basis of that language. It's not good enough. I'd have to go live in the countries. It's not good enough to actually do the translation or interpretation work, but it's great for vacation. And then in Taiwan, I didn't learn the language at all, and we were in a small agriculture community. You mentioned majoring in agriculture. My dad has a PhD from Penn State in agriculture, and so he was in international research. So we were living in a small farming community. Nobody spoke English. They had never even seen blonde-haired kids or light skin, so they'd want to come over and touch us. And there I learned that people are people. They want safety. They want humor. They, of course, want their basic needs met. They want to have a loving family. And there's all sorts of things you can do to communicate without language. But I really think that we can have a more peaceful and prosperous world if we have understanding. And so eventually I got into this business just because of my international exposure. I majored in foreign service and international politics. I love traveling, and I love languages. So that's how I got into it.
So I see on your website a number of recognized brands, right? That people will recognize. ADP, for an example, Brigham Women's Hospital. Talk about the companies that you work with and how they utilize their services. Kind of what's the problem that you solve for your clients?
They either want to increase their revenue or reduce their liability. So, talking about increasing revenue, less than 1% of companies export, and 98% of those are small and mid sized businesses. And those that do export have higher revenues, higher profits, higher valuations, higher growth, higher stability, and they're less risky. Um, and you don't even, this is something interesting, Paul, we were talking about at the beginning, that you don't even have to export outside of the United States. In the United States, we have many different languages, and the Spanish speaking population in particular is growing, that if you leverage some language in your marketing in the United States, you can increase your sales. Because you connect more with the people that you're trying to connect with. And if you doubt this, just go to Telemundo or Univision and look at the ads. It's fast food and car and insurance. All those companies are advertising on those channels to the Spanish speakers in the United States. So that's, if you want to increase your revenues. And state and federal governments offer free resources and grants, free money to get your translation done to grow your business because of that imbalance of trade. We send empty container ships out of the United States. So they're trying to fill those container ships, and plus services are the #1 export from the United States. So I work with a lot of creative agencies that, kind of go, oh, I didn't realize that we could even export. You can help people international. So that's all the increased revenue. On the reduced liability, that would be like legal agreements and authorization forms and anything that could put you at risk. If you have disclosures on your websites, all that, if you use machine translation, which is junk, it could put you in a real liable position. And so you want to make sure you have high quality translation. There's even been cases where police departments and hospitals have been sued and lost because they use the Google Translate app to help facilitate conversations. So that's where we get involved in helping figure out your strategy of what you want to get done, looking at technology process and making sure you get the quality that you need.
It's interesting that you bring up Google Translate. During the pandemic, we made an organizational decision to close caption every program that we do, right? Every one of these programs gets closed captioned. Our virtual speaker series gets closed captioned. And we actually had a back and forth debate around, do we use the automatic caption service that is embedded in some of these products, or do we have the live person actually in the program with us live captioning it? And we opted for the live captioning because when you see 93% accuracy from the Google Translator, from the automatic or the artificial intelligence powered translators, it's amazing what 7% inaccuracy does to a conversation, right? And so I'm sure you see this in your line of work. It takes things like tone and context and just not understanding someone's alliteration, and could really change the meaning of a conversation. And then you apply like the multicultural context to it, and it could actually become offensive in some situations. I'm sure you run into that a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And you brought up that. I mean, that was so rich of a conversation right there. Closed captioning is for the deaf and hard of hearing. And so there is automated there, but if you still go to a conference, you'll see, that they're accommodating deaf and hard of hearing. You'll see somebody at the front of the room actually typing that in to get more accurate. They can do it. Subtitling is when you put other languages on there. And, it's the same. You've got real accuracy issues. Now, the trade-off is if you do the automated, it's fast and it's cheap. So it can be better than nothing, but you want to think about your audience. If you're going to Comic-Con and it's inexpensive, and you wouldn't have translation instead, somebody might use automated translation. But if you're at a life sciences conference or you're at something where it counts, you're going to want to have live interpreters and not use the automated interpreting that is on there. So it really takes thinking through who your audience is, what your message is, and what your liability is to get it set up the right way.
It's interesting. I'm fascinated by the statistics you just used earlier in terms of small and mid-sized companies that are actually exporting and working on the global scale. But you also mentioned about how in a multicultural environment, your services help engage customers in a more authentic way. I think of a day on campus here at Penn State. I can walk across campus and hear English. I can hear Spanish, Arabic, Farsi, Chinese, right? Probably a couple different versions of Chinese being spoken. And so how could a smaller or mid-sized company that serves just the student population in your hometown of State College, Pennsylvania, benefit from this kind of global approach?
Well, if you're looking at attracting the students, I mean, number one is just making it welcome. The town next to me is Marlborough, Massachusetts, and they've got a big Brazilian Portuguese speaking population there. So when I'm talking to Main Street businesses, I'm saying just put up a welcome sign that's in Portuguese for, Brazilian Portuguese. So it just right there, you're opening the door. And for students, I think that's the same thing is if you've got something that says something in their language right up front, then, they'll feel more comfortable coming in. Then if you've got a menu, do you offer translations for it? I mean, think about if you go over to China, and they hand you a menu that's all in Chinese, it's going to be really hard to order something. So either have pictures on there, if you don't want to do multiple languages, or just translate the menu and make it more welcoming. Now, if you've got a business that you actually could export something and, think about services too, then, reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with your contact at the state that can pull you in and help you develop a strategy, make connections, get grants to support you, tell you about trade shows that are in your industry. There's all sorts of things you can start doing to export. If you need to talk to somebody that's going to be a more extensive conversation, but not enough to get an in-person interpreter, there's telephone interpreting. It's cheap and you pay by the minute. There's no setup charges. There's no monthly charges. You just use it when you need it and you can facilitate a conversation. So that might even help for, I don't know, some of the professors or recruiting. Particularly if the admissions department is talking to parents of the students that are coming, because oftentimes the students have to pass the TOEFL exam, which means their English is going to be good enough. But speaking with the parents, don't forget to provide information in language or have telephone interpreting to converse with them. There was so much information on that. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, you did great. You did great. You said something that's fascinating to me. I think of kind of the history of our country, right, and how work has changed, and how the economy has changed, and what drives the economy. We've gone from being a manufacturing and industrial economy to now a predominantly service-based economy. And it jumped out at me. You just mentioned services are the number one export from the U.S. What are those services that we're exporting to other countries, and again, kind of how can a company that provides those services go global?
So services can include consulting. I've heard engineer consulting has been exploding over the last few years. I guess that's because of all the growth in the building that's going on internationally. You've got the marketing and ad agencies. You've got PR companies, e-commerce support companies. all the various consulting and accounting and lawyers. All those are services that can be exported. So, and the first way you'd go about doing that is just thinking. Well, I mean, there's lots of first ways you can do it, and that's thinking about how you're going to enter a new market. And the best way to do it is to do a strategy. Which country or region has the greatest need and the least competition, and run the numbers to make sure you can make money. I've heard of all sorts of other reasons for why people enter a market, and that could be that they've got friends and family there, they've got a contact there, it's a place that they want to visit. They're looking at their Google Analytics and they're seeing that people are coming in and buying from them. I know of a company that makes fans, so they are a manufacturer, and they saw that they were getting a bunch of requests in from Germany, and so they translated their website into Germany and increased their sales from that. So it's paying attention. First off, it's taking the blinds off and realizing that we're all people and American goods are in demand, and then figuring out where you're going to go. Start with one country, figure out a process and a system, and then grow it from there. And contact your state resources, because they're there, they've been through it, and they are so loaded with information and willing to help.
Wendy, we're coming up, just surpassed the 1-year anniversary of the launch of your book, The Language of Global Marketing. Was recently recognized as the best business book by the Independent Press Award and at the American Book Fest. Congratulations on
Thank you.
The success of your book. Tell folks a little bit about that. If they were to go out and buy that, I think they can get it on your website, which we're scrolling on the bottom of the screen. But take us behind the scenes, and what do readers get out of The Language of Global Marketing?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing it up. What was happening is there's so much information about exporting, and how do you handle your communications, your marketing communications when you're doing that? How do you think about it? So I start out with in the book about what are the opportunities, how do you think about what country, how do you do this strategy, and then there's some general marketing principles in there about inbound marketing, how you do it, and then how do you adapt that marketing so you don't have to recreate the whole wheel, but how do you adapt it to make it appropriate for international audiences? So when you go on Amazon and you search for books on global marketing, you get a lot of textbooks, which are great, but they're hard for the practical business person to really take and apply. So I wanted a very applied learnings in my book where I use case studies, I use stories, I use examples, and then I lay out a framework for you to follow to build out your global marketing or your export plan. And so it's, I've gotten a lot of good feedback, a couple of awards on it. We've had professors use it in their classes. So if you're a professor of marketing or you're a student of marketing and you want to learn more about global marketing, certainly encourage that. We'll do bulk sales to universities through, direct sale from us, but you can also buy the book on Amazon and get it tomorrow.
I also mentioned in the intro, well, you mentioned that you were active at Penn State as maybe the sportscaster on WPSU. You do really well in front of a camera, and you have a great voice for podcasting. That's something that you have gotten into. Tell our listeners about the Global Marketing Show podcast.
Oh, I love the Global Marketing Show podcast. I have the opportunity to talk to people who are doing exporting and all sorts of things. Our latest episode was released. It's Walter Brooks from Brooks Made Gourmet Foods. It's a fabulous story. He makes barbecue sauce. And he's in Atlanta. Do you know how many barbecue sauces there are in the United States and how many of them are out of Atlanta? Well, he's at a food exhibition once, and their state export representative came by and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about exporting?" Now, the guy's great. He says, "Yeah, because why not? Business owners always say yeah, right?" So they start working together. He goes over to trade shows in the Middle East. He connects up with people over there who want American sources. Barbecue sauce is gourmet over there. So he says, all in all, he probably invested about $100,000 in his export venture, and he just signed a $10 million contract.
Wow.
So when I talk about successes, you got to listen to this episode with Walter Brooks. And then you can go through there. We put a summary on them. So there's a guy on there that's never left the United States, and he heads up global sales for a company. He just goes to the conferences that are here in the United States for his industry, and he meets people. We've got some stuff on education. How do you, what's international education? How do you get involved in that? What are hot markets? How do people handle their translation? There's an international sales consultant that's on there that's talking about, how you form relationships with distributors. When do you make, hire your own people there? We've got international PEOs, so when you're ready to hire people. So we've got some really, really interesting. We've got Wilson Golf on there. It's fascinating. I just love it because I get to spend the time talking to all these people, hearing about their stories.
Absolutely. And it's, I've done podcasting for a number of years now. And the way I describe it to people is it's just recording the conversations that I would normally be having and making those accessible to a much broader audience, right? There's an accessibility that that the podcasts provide when people don't have the access or opportunity to be in certain rooms where these conversations are happening. It broadens those conversations and makes them accessible to more people.
Yes, that's exactly it. And so I just get to fire away the questions, and we're downloaded in 40 countries now. So the reach has been much greater than I even anticipated.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
As I think about what we've gone through as a global community over the past couple of years, I think about the global reckoning on social justice and how conversations around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are now part of our everyday as they should have been, right? It strikes me that yes, you're working, you're a global marketing company, but it strikes me maybe at the core of what your company does is helps others with their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies in some ways.
Yes, very, that's very insightful for you to say. Yeah, because all the diversity, equity, and inclusion right now, we've been at the forefront of that for ages because when we're asked, are you a diverse company? Absolutely. We have to be with all the languages. We do over 200 languages, so we have to be. So we're always working with accents and differences and religions and holidays and expectations. And so learning how to navigate through that. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion oftentimes in the United States is thought about, color, sexual orientation, religion, but oftentimes language is forgotten. And right now, people are having a really hard time hiring. And so I've been doing a lot of speaking and consulting about taking the blinders off and thinking, how do you hire employees that don't speak English and integrate them into your company? The knee-jerk reaction is usually, well, we'll teach them English. But you can have a really good employee that doesn't speak English, but as long as you can attract them into your company and you can train them so they're safe, give them room for advancement, and then include them in celebrations and company meetings, they will actually be very loyal, appreciative of the job, because they may be lawyers, doctors, accountants in their home country, but have immigrated here and may not be able to get those same positions. But you bring in that brain power in, and if they become loyal, they start bringing in other friends and family that may speak their same language but not be strong in English. So there's a huge opportunity to think language as a diversity when you're hiring here in the United States.
I don't know if I should ask this next question.
So bring it on.
If it doesn't go the right way, we'll just cut it out of the podcast. But I'm sure that there are funny cultural stories, language gaffes, things that happen or that you hear happen, and then companies use your services to maybe clean up the mess that they have made. Any of
Yeah.
those kind of encounters come to mind?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about company mistakes because that's probably all confidential that I haven't been able to find in the public domain, but there's lots of them there. So one of my favorites, because I love my Mazda, and my last car was a Mazda, and I've driven a BMW and I've driven different cars, but I'm a huge Mazda fan, and their tagline in Japan is Jinba Ite, which means it's a horse archery warrior flying across the plain, feeling at one with the horse in that special moment. So that goes really good with driving a car. Well, when I first took that saying, and I like to play on Google Translate or play on websites that don't have translation. And so one time I was playing around and I popped it into Google Translate, and Jinba Ite translated into danger. And I thought, well, you're not going to want to have a tagline for a car that says danger. So then, I guess it was about a year later, I popped it in again to see what it said, and it came out with one horse. Still not, if you want to drive a one horse car, that doesn't sound too great. And then recently I put it in and it came out Jinba. So luckily for them, they know not to use Google Translate for that. Then there's all sorts of fun words that we don't have a direct translation for here in the United States. One is kalsarikanit. Okay, so it's a Finnish word that means I'm at home, I'm in my underwear, I'm drunk, and there's no way I'm going out tonight. So if you need a word to say that, just say kalsarikanit.
What is going on in Finland that they need it? Like, that has to happen more than once for them to have a word for it.
Wow. I mean, we are talking to the Penn State crowd. There could be instances where that happens. Americans aren't above that.
I can imagine scenarios, but to have a whole word, that's that's
good.
commonplace.
You want another one?
Yeah, give me one more.
Kummerspect.
Okay.
That's a German word that's appropriate after COVID. Excessive weight gain from emotional eating.
Right.
Kummerspect. So these are the kind of things that you can't use in Google Translate. And if you use Google Translate or the wrong interpreter or a bilingual employee who's not qualified or a distributor who is just very sales oriented and not marketing oriented, if you use somebody that's not qualified to do your translations, these are the kind of cultural miscommunications that can happen.
Yeah, I think it could also, as I think about your work, slang has become part of global marketing campaigns,
Yeah.
right? And I think of how that might not exactly translate into like American slang. It might not exactly translate. So there might be not only cultural, but even maybe generational differences.
Yeah, that's really interesting because that's another reason why machine translation can't keep up, because there's about 2,000 words a year that are added into the dictionary. And it's really fun to look at Webster's when they add new words in. I don't have the latest release of what words are in, but right after COVID, vax, there was some other ones that come out. But if you think about vax and selfie and I mean, all the slang words that come out, if you use those in your marketing, it can be extremely difficult to translate. So we actually talk about global English, which is not English that you use to market globally. It's how do you write in a style that can be translated and understood. We've got a great case study on our website about Rotary International. They're an organization that doesn't brag about themselves, but their mission is to do good things around the world. So all the countries had like different messaging they were sending out. And when they decided to globalize, they realized that they really had to come together with how they were going to talk about it. And their different campaigns didn't work across every language. So some of them they'd adapt, some of them drop, and some would translate really well. So it really does take a strategy and a human to say, yeah, that doesn't work, or we don't have slang for that, or understanding the slang and how and exactly what the meaning is.
This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined today by Wendy Pease. She is the owner and president of Rapport International. Wendy, at the end of every podcast, we like to have a little bit of fun, maybe get a little nostalgic, what we call the lightning round here. So I'm just going to throw a couple quick hitter things at you, and you tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
All right, your favorite class at Penn State?
I had a geography class called geopolitics. Can't remember the professor's name. Loved it. It talked about, you don't want me to go into it. You just want me to answer for the lightning round?
Nobody ever does. Everybody always goes into it. So that's good. How about if you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be and why?
Okay, so this is one that's loaded with emotion, but you got to listen to my explanation. I would have dinner with Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
And it's not because of her politics or The View, but I think she has been in the public eye for so long and taken so many hits. I would like to learn about resiliency from her. So I would pick Hillary Clinton.
That's a good one and a good reason. Your most unusual "we are" moment. Maybe you are, either you said "we are" when you encountered a Penn Stater when you didn't expect to, or you're wearing Penn State gear and you heard "we are." What is your "we are" moment?
San Francisco. I, on the floor of graduation, met somebody who was moving out there. My parents, and I didn't know where I was going to live, but my parents had given me a one-way ticket to California because that's where I decided I wanted to live. So in San Francisco, I was surprised at how many Penn State sweatshirts I would see out there. And when you saw them, you could say, "We are," and the person would stop, look around, and answer Penn State. So San Francisco.
That's awesome. How about your favorite Penn State sport?
Oh, come on, really? Football. And ironically, when I was living in State College, I always babysat for the games. I didn't go to the games until I was a student, and then I loved it.
Oh, that's amazing. It's a good way to make money, babysitting during Penn State football games.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fantastic business.
Yeah, I'm going back for a game this fall with a bunch of Kappa Sig friends.
Oh, that's great. And final question, your favorite flavor of creamery ice cream?
Well, I love Peachy Paterno because of the name, but I'd have to say my all-time favorite is vanilla because it's really hard to make a really good vanilla ice cream, and Penn State does.
That is, you might be the first person to say vanilla on here, but sales at the creamery will show that vanilla ice cream is the #1 sold ice cream at the Penn State Creamery, at the Berkey Creamery.
I am really surprised, but I'm not special.
I'm plain, but there's a lot of closet vanilla orderers out there.
It feels so plain to say it, and I always hated the comment plain vanilla because it's hard to do good vanilla.
Absolutely. Wendy, I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the People of Penn State podcast and allowing us to share your story with our audience.
Thank you so much, Paul. I feel like a little bit of home. Always happy to talk Penn State.
Absolutely. We are.
Penn State.
I want to thank our producer, Vincent Lungaro, and our guest relations coordinator, Mara Ryan. If you like this episode, I hope that you'll subscribe to the People of Penn State podcast in your favorite podcast app of choice. And while you're there, go ahead and give us a rating and drop us a review. Shout out to us. Give us a "we are" if you're a Penn Stater listening to the People of Penn State podcast, and help us spread the word and share the podcast with your fellow Penn Staters. If you're a member of the Penn State Alumni Association, thank you for your support. If you're not, what are you waiting for? Go to our website at alumni.psu.edu, and you too can become a member of the world's largest alumni association. Thanks for tuning in and listening, and for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
No act of ours bring shame to one heart that loves thy name. May our lives but swell thy fame,
dear Penn State,
dear